Good morning, team. Dan Scarrow coming to you again from the Scarrow household in our piano room. I have waited until Friday to record this video on purpose. There is a number of things that are moving here in Minnesota in regards to the reopening of churches or potential reopening of churches. They're even in play today. And so as I come to you this morning, actually I'm coming to you in the afternoon. It's a little after 12:30. And I've spent the morning in meetings with the governor's office and attempting to help he and his staff understand the importance of houses of faith reopening at some level. We're going to have some more meetings this afternoon, and so as you can tell, things are evolving even as I speak these words. But I wanted to record this video because many of you have been asking about reopening. What are we going to do? Particularly those of you in Minnesota. I understand that restrictions are easing in South Dakota and North Dakota, and I want to encourage each of you, each of the North Central District churches that are in those locations, in those states, to honor to the best of their ability what the government is asking you to do, and also to be thoughtful and to be a good citizen as you make plans for reopening. For those of us in Minnesota, this is most germane to you. Our situation is a little bit unique in that the most recent conversation from the governor's office to the public has been that restrictions are going to be loosening on non-essential businesses, bars, restaurants, other things, but the restrictions on houses of faith will continue to be 10 or less, which essentially means none of us are going to meet in Minnesota. I have been working very hard to communicate, to engage the governor's office with another group of evangelical leaders. We have been meeting actually weekly with the governor's office ever since the COVID virus and the whole situation began to impact us. Over the last 7 to 10 days, the number of meetings has gone up sharply as we've tried to help the governor shape his thinking and his expression on this issue. I come to you today a little bit disappointed with the most recent communication, and that is that non-essential businesses and bars and restaurants are going to be able to be opening at some level, and yet houses of faith are not. So this morning, I and a number of other leaders engaged the governor's office. We're going to have ongoing conversations throughout the course of the day to try to help him reshape his thinking on this. So I come to you for two reasons. I want to inform you what's happening, and then I want to offer you some thoughts and perhaps some direction as you lead your church. I know for many of you, you are experiencing pressure from elders and congregation members. There's a wide array of opinions about this issue of meeting or not meeting as a church, and I know you're in the middle of all that. And for many of you, the need to be an expert in the pandemic, to be an expert in a number of areas that none of us are, and then to offer counsel and wise leadership. It's a tremendous challenge for you. I know that's true. I want to inform you of something else that's in play for those of us in Minnesota. This week, middle of the week, the Catholic churches and the Lutheran churches in Minnesota sent letters to the governor's office informing him that they would be opening all of their buildings to 1/3 capacity for meetings beginning next week. They explained their rationale for that. They explained their disappointment with the governor's move to allow non-essential businesses and restaurants and bars to begin meeting and opening, and yet to not allow houses of worship. I read all of their letters, including a legal brief that they included, and I have been in communication with a number of people over the course of this week in regards to those. And I wanted to inform you that that's happening, but I also wanted to let you know where we are as the Christian Missionary Alliance on this. I have agreed in my heart and in substance with what the Catholic and Lutheran churches are saying about the need for churches to reopen. This is a critical time for emotional and spiritual support for those who are struggling with many of the things that COVID has caused, not just the physical implications. And so I agree with their substance of the rationale for why they're doing what they're doing. One concern I have, though, is that they've expressed this rationale. A significant piece of it is the right that they have to meet. I want to come to you today as kingdom people, and I want to maybe reframe that a little bit. While I agree with much of what they're saying and their rationale, and perhaps even their implementation, I am concerned that we're having this discussion in regards to rights, First Amendment or otherwise. As kingdom people, we cannot have the discussion that we need to have around COVID and churches based on rights. And the reason is, as kingdom people, our decision making is much more complex than our rights. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul articulates that kingdom people are not guided by their rights. They are guided by a willingness to become a slave to everyone, to do whatever it takes to win as many as possible to Jesus. That's our driving motivation. And for those of you that have congregation members or elders who are bringing the rights issue to the table, this is a good time to remind them. It's a discipleship moment. That as kingdom people, we don't approach the way we behave in the world based on our rights. We approach the way we behave in the world based on love for others and a servanthood compelled by our passion to see others love Jesus. That's a very different way to look at life. Philippians chapter 2 reminds us that we're not to do anything out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, we're to value others above ourselves and not looking to our own interest, but each of us looking to the interest of others. I think that's a germane and helpful way to look at what we're talking about in these days. And so as church leaders, I want to encourage you. I know you're facing pressure. I want to encourage you to reframe the conversation around a different way of thinking as we come to what really is the last lap or two of this issue that we're in. Let's finish well, team. Let's finish well. I want to encourage you to lead your team by helping them reframe this discussion that we're having with some questions, and I'll offer you 4 questions. First is, how can we best express love for our city or region as we make decisions about COVID restrictions? How can we express love for our city and region as we make these decisions? It's not about our rights. It's about our expression of Jesus' love in our community. Secondly, question number 2, what example are we setting? And what does this communicate about our trust in God? As we make decisions in these next weeks, what example are we setting? And how does that impact people's view of God? How does our decision making, this is question number 3, how does our decision making impact our witness? As non-believers are looking at believers, we're shaping how they look at God. As we make decisions, remember that your witness in the community is at stake. And connected to that is your impact in the community. Fourthly, I want to ask you to ask this question: how do we best care for our church family? And I know for many of you that's front and center. You want to care for your church family in emotional ways and spiritual ways and the social needs that people have. So I'm saying that to encourage thoughtfulness, moderation, and I also want to encourage you to reframe the conversation when it comes up, that these decisions that we're making about churches opening or not opening have nothing to do with our rights. They have everything to do with our servant posture in the world as God's kingdom people. So friends, I do want to tell you that I share your frustration. The number of meetings that I'm having in these days, and even today, which is my day off, these are all had because I share your frustrations. I'm working very hard to help the governor reframe his thinking around these issues and perhaps change his perspective on reopening. So these meetings are going to include a number of folks that are like-minded: Converge, Baptists, EFCA, Assemblies of God, Covenant Church, Southern Baptists, Conservative Presbyterians, North American Baptists, and Missionary Baptists are all joining me in these conversations that I'm having with the governor, and will have again this afternoon. So friends, as many of you are asking, what should we do in regards to opening? I want to encourage you to First of all, communicate what I have communicated to you, to your leaders, and I want to encourage you to consider continuing to honor what the government is doing. We are working very hard to help them change their mind, and at least in the short term, I want to encourage you to abide by the executive orders in Minnesota. I know this is challenging for many of you. I want you to know that it's a fluid situation and will probably even change before this weekend's out. But I wanted to communicate to you because many of you have been asking. So friends, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your leadership. I know there's a tremendous amount of frustration and pressure for those of you who are leading churches, and I want you to know that we've been praying regularly for you, praying that God would give you wisdom, God would give you peace, give you strength, and that there would be grace and humility in the conversations that you have. I want to remind you that these moments of pressure are great moments for discipleship with your leaders, to help them reframe their thinking from a secular view of their rights in the world to a kingdom view of how God's people operate in the world. This is a great season for that. My friends, I will continue to communicate with you, and I'll keep you posted on how things are going, but I wanted to just offer you an update. It's not a conclusive update. I'm sure it's not even I'm sure it is a frustrating update because it might not be what you want to hear. Nevertheless, I want to keep you in the loop. Blessings, friends. Please pray for me as I engage in these conversations. I want to represent you well. I want to represent the kingdom well. And we are praying together that God's will be done in this. Blessings to each of you. Our love and our prayers go with you.